Chris,
Yeah.
just before you joined, I was just setting the scene for these calls and just explaining the philosophy around the fact that this is the creation of a safe space for conversations to take place, and through conversations we build relationships. Through relationships we build communities. And I know, Chris, you and I have that very much in common, don't we? That
We do.
this thing about community building, because there's power in communities, and also stories. That's something that all of us have in common. We're all interested in the power of stories. And in one of the conversations, Yazin, maybe a couple of weeks ago, I can't remember if it was last week or the week before that, I was saying, because you're at university, you're a university student, and I was saying that academically there are two main ways of acquiring knowledge. One way is that that you're trying to look for a recipe for a solution, for an outcome. You're an engineer, and as an engineer you need to know the facts, and those facts have to be accurate facts, because when you are engineering, without accuracy you won't get the outcome that you're looking for. So that's one way of acquiring knowledge, is we're interested in the data, the formulas, the solution, and it's all outcome based. That's one way of acquiring knowledge. And the other way of acquiring knowledge in the social sciences, and this is what Buki and I have in common, the social sciences, it's not just about the facts and the accuracy, and it's the stories are complex, they're not simple. And through the stories, we're not interested in solutions, we're interested in the meanings, the interpretations. And last week, Mohammed, you were talking about the tragedies, the constant daily tragedies, and that people are not simply numbers, and that number thing, it's like the statistics are important, but they're not the flesh and bones, so around each of those numbers there is a story as well. And it's those stories that humanizes. It's through the stories that we feel each other's pain, through the stories, because when you talk about a loss, I've experienced loss, and so I can empathize with that. And so we were saying that with feelings are universal. We know what it's like to love, to hate, to be angry. All of those are universal, but the beliefs are not universal, because I might believe one thing, somebody else might believe something else. And so for knowledge to be holistic, we need to be thinking about both recipes and stories, and thinking about the holistic thing. So as an engineer, Yazan, like when you are being taught about engineering, of course you need to learn from the expert engineers about the facts and the figures and the formulas and the solutions and whatever. But then more important than that, or at the start of it, you have to ask yourself, why am I building this bridge? Because we said that we have come together because we're, through these relationships, we're building bridges. But the question is why? What's the purpose of the bridge? Who is the bridge for? What will the bridge do? And that's where the story is. So that's kind of like basically to set the scene for Chris and Buki, who haven't been on these calls before. It's like, why are we having these calls? And now let me introduce Yazan, if you could please introduce yourself to Buki and Chris, because they haven't met you before.
Okay. First of all, I'm happy that we are having an interview today with you. So my name is Yazan. I can say like a genocide survivor. So I left or I evacuated Gaza from the war after 150 days, and now currently living in Egypt. So I used to study engineering in Gaza, and now I'm going to start from the beginning here in Egypt. Actually, I was working with Ms. Jisfer and Muhammad on my project, which is Phoenix Raising. It was like a brand. It's like more than a brand. Actually, it's a community. It's like bridge building. So it's a concept of the Gaza of the Gazan people. So shortly, it's a brand that represents Gaza, and Gaza has been known like since ages that is phoenix, and phoenix is we can say a bird from our ancient ancestors, that this bird can raise himself from death. So that is the concept of Gaza. So Gaza has faced a lot of wars along the years. So after every war, Gaza rebuilt itself again. So it's the same as the phoenix bird. Actually, that what happened with us as Palestinians and Gazans. So I survived war, and now I have to live my life again in another place. So it's like I have lived again, and now I'm going to build my life from the zero again. So that brand represents that idea. Actually, we sell that concept. We will be selling that concept. Actually, for me, my brand will have some products like maybe T-shirts, stickers, notebooks, and some things like that. That helps we can say, university students or students in general. These items will be in one box. That box will be in one theme. So the theme will be connected to the phoenix or to the concept of Gaza. So that concept, we will make it like a community, as Ms. Jessifer said. We will be building bridges. So like people around the world, they have faced something, or maybe things similar to what Gaza has faced. Okay, so as we can say, people in India or South Africa, they faced similar things. So by that concept, we are not focusing on only Gaza. We are focusing on a humanitarian issue. Okay, so we can build bridges with all humans, or all people that have feelings, or want to empathize with that concept or that issue. So that brand will be a community. So will be more than friends, more than a brand, or like customers and seller. So I'm working on these things here in Egypt, actually. And Miss Jessifer actually is helping me in that thing, and we will be successful one day.
Yeah, of course. Yes, thank you, Yazan. Mohammed, if you could please introduce yourself for Buki and Chris.
Okay, hello everyone. Hi Buki, hi Mr. Christopher. So I'm Hamad, I'm Palestinian from Gaza, still living in this genocide more than 300 days. Stopped counting after the 300. Still living in Gaza, didn't evacuated out. I studied IT, information technology. I worked before with Miss Jessifer in her websites, and inshallah will do my best to help Yazan to spread also our voices as a Palestinian to the world.
Wonderful. Buki, if you could please introduce yourself to everyone.
Hello everyone, I'm Buki, and I'm very pleased to be in your midst, and I'm very grateful to Desiree for also inviting me. Thank you so much. I'm a lecturer at Global Banking School in Birmingham. My background is in healthcare, so I'm a healthcare management lecturer, and I support Year 2 students. And I live in Oswestry, somewhere near the Welsh border in England, in the United Kingdom. Yeah, and I think that's all from me. Thanks. Thank you.
You know, what we have in common is that we are both autoethnographers. That's a style of doing research which is based on storytelling around our own lived experiences, because we're all experts in our own lived experience. So and Buki and I have a lot of common mutual friends, don't we?
Yes, we do. And I did my education doctorate at Canterbury, and I wrote about how my Nigerian culture has influenced my learning journey on the education doctorate program using autoethnography.
Yes, and later on we'll talk about Nigeria, because you see Nigeria, like India, has gone through a lot of you know, this mass kind of disruptions to communities, as you know. So Chris, please introduce yourself to everyone.
Oh, hello, I'm Chris. I live in central Birmingham, and I've known Jesvi for quite a while, because we both belong to a public speaking society, I think you'd call it. Though neither of us belong there anymore, but we had a good time there and met a lot of people, made some good friends. I am a gentleman of leisure now, but I spend a lot of my time building community, and I help run a gardening charity here in the inner city, and also I also belong to other community groups, and quite after I retired, I worked in the health economy as a patient representative, but I've finished with that now in terms of I've run my course, and the health service has changed around, so they no longer want patient representatives anymore. And I was a governor at one of the health trusts that are scattered around this country. So yeah, I have a deep commitment to community. I think whatever the problem, community is the answer. And but unfortunately, we live in a top-down society that doesn't recognize that, and so they don't profit by all the riches there are in community, all the knowledge and all the cooperative enterprises. So I'm looking forward to sharing our conversation and contributing to this this enterprise that Jesvi has brought together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you. So, and the other thing that all five of us have in common is our shared kind of interest in creativity. You know, all five of us, we believe in the power of creativity, of this creating value out of nothing. And this is the way it works. You see, Mohammed worked on my web. He's my web designer. And so through that, a relationship was built. There was a relationship. I liked Mohammed. It was more than just a web designer. I liked him. And so through that, when October the 7th happened, the first thing I thought about was you, Mohammed. That was my first thought. I hope you're okay. I hope your family's okay, because I know his mother as well. I've spoken to your mother several times. And so these were real people. These are real people. And so they're not numbers. And so can you see that from that one relationship? Now look how many there are. There's five of us here. There's Nikita, there's Preet, there's more. There's a lot more people who are interested in these conversations, but they might not be here, but they're here in spirit, because they listen to the conversations, and they don't want to be speaking in public for various reasons, because it takes courage to speak in public. And Chris and I know that, because we were both part of that public speaking community that he spoke about earlier, where, to talk in public. I'm a teacher, so I'm used to talking in public. For 40 years, I've been a teacher. But, like when you're a teacher, you're not talking about yourself, you're talking about the subject. And it's much easier to talk about the subject than it is to talk about ourselves. That requires courage. And so the way I do research now is like through the publishing, because Yazan, last week you talked about creating a blog, and you said, to publish a blog. But actually, this is like, they call this a vlog, don't they, with a V? This is being published, because it's being recorded, because it's on YouTube. It's still publication, it's still publishing. Whenever we make our views and our opinions available to everyone, we're speaking in a different way compared with if you were just sitting in my living room having coffee. Like, we know that we have to speak the truth. We can't just talk nonsense. I could talk nonsense with you if I was just seeing you over a cup of tea in my living room, but here we have to be more accountable for what we say. And so that kind of makes the conversation different compared with a totally informal conversation. So, and the space where these conversations take place, that's really important as well. And I keep referring back to experiences of my own family when they moved to England, but I hope this is relevant. When my family moved to England back in the 1960s, so about 65 years ago, and at that time there were no community centres, you know, like for people to meet within their own local communities. And so the places, the spaces where people had these conversations were on the route going to the shop, you know. So like when you walked from your house to the shop, you would meet somebody else who looks like you, and then you would stop and have a conversation with them. You know, you'd stop and have a conversation with them. In that conversation, you'd find out where they lived, and then you'd get invited to their house for a cup of tea. And then through those conversations, through those relationships, a community was built. And so from my uncle first came to Stafford in 1961, and at that time there was nothing. And 10 years later, 30 families had pooled their resources and bought, first of all rented and then bought a local building. It was a church, which was they were going to move to a different area, and they were selling it. And 30 families pooling their resources were able to buy that building to establish the first gurdwara, a local place of worship, so that we could have a space for to celebrate, to mourn, to for everything that a community needs to do together. So the point there is that, to start with, there was no building, there was no formal space. The conversations happened on the journey from your house to the shop, or your journey from the house to the school. That on the streets, that's where the space was for the conversations to take place. And now, when I go back to Stafford now, those same streets where those conversations, when I went from my house to the shop, I would meet at least 2 or 3 people from my community there and talk and have conversations with them. That no longer happens, because now people drive, and because they drive, nobody's there walking on the streets anymore. So we don't have those conversations. And so you see, that's an example of how spaces are fluid, a little bit like the sand dunes, where in the Middle East, we have the sand dunes. The sand is always moving. So, it's not permanent. Those spaces are not permanent. And so that's, we're having these conversations here now, and these conversations will be fluid. People will come, people will go, and the community will survive based on the strength and the depth of the relationships. Yeah. So taking it over to you now then. So Yazan, tell us about the progress you've made in creating the spaces for your community to be built.
Okay, actually my journey through Gaza to Egypt here, I faced all what you have just said, actually building communities. Actually, the same concept of building communities are here being starting from the beginning. So we can say Palestinians are seeking to live together in the same area or in the same neighborhood. So for me, the city I live in is full of Palestinians. We have another city is full of Palestinians also. And also the concept of raising again from death. Actually, there are a lot of businesses that were popular in Gaza, or famous in Gaza, like we can say restaurants. They are having a new branches here in Egypt after they have been destroyed in Gaza. They are starting from the beginning here. So they are like building new communities. They are raising from zero. So for me, I'm seeking to meet Palestinians. I'm seeking to see friends here in Egypt, like from my background from Gaza. So we are building a community. We are meeting. We meet in these places that we used to go to when we used to live in Gaza. So in these places, as you mentioned, we meet Palestinians. All Palestinians, like they want to feel like Gaza again after they have left it. So I met a lot of Palestinians, a lot of Gazans there. So that is the concept of building a community. And now I'm trying to make or to do that concept in my life, to just get to know new people, networking with new people in my field, or in what I'm planning to do, especially in the Phoenix raising that we are talking about. Okay, so actually I have a background like about that concept or about that idea. So I have a lot of friends from Gaza who are willing to help me in that brand. So all of them are creative, as we said. We all share the creativity sense. So like maybe we have a graphic designer, we have a web designer, we have we can say a business administration student. So all these things together combined will help us in our brand or in our Phoenix raising project. Okay, so now in Egypt, I'm looking for new people, not only from Gaza. No, it's okay to find people from Egypt, from other cultures, to just make that new community. Okay, and that new community will have an idea or a message to deliver. So actually that project is or aiming to help Palestinians. I will be focusing on Palestinians in Gaza. So that brand or that project will based in Egypt here, and actually managed from Egypt, but actually I will be helped from people from Gaza. Like all people will work with me will be from Gaza, like from designers, from content writers, videographers, or for the montage or for video editing. So they will all be from Gaza to support them. And actually there will be a percentage of the money will go to Gaza. Like I'm planning to do, like we can say, give food to people, like in a specific percentage. So that is, we are building a community and trying to help our community or the youth people in Gaza.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. And Mohammed, you know, one of the things, like, because you've moved from the city to Rafah now to where you are now, that community, you know, those people that were familiar to you in your hometown are no longer there. You know, you're like, so how are you rebuilding those relationships? You know, what are you doing where you are to rebuild the relationships that have been lost?
Well, actually, most of my friends stayed in Gaza City, the north of Gaza Strip. They didn't evacuate it as I did. So we just contacted from time to time by calling them just to make sure they are still alive. Now, after evacuated so much, many times, actually, but it's still not difficult for me to have spaces, to have people to talk, as all of us 100%, we are sharing the same situation. We lost our homes, we lost relatives, we lost our lives, our past, we lost everything. We are suffering from the genocide, we are suffering from moving the idea itself. It's very difficult. So we have so much things to can share with us, so that we can have our own space, we can our own small, if I can say, community to talk to each other, to have to spend some time to each other. So it's not difficult for me. There's many people around me in the streets here, as we are like crowded in very small areas, so it's not difficult to find people sharing the same things and to talk to each other, to, if I can say, like trying to spending the time, as we are here cannot do anything actually. So it's not difficult for us to have our own small environment or small community to talk.
Yeah, and I do remember Yazan a few weeks ago saying that every day you wake up and you see your loved ones alive, you think that relationship even deepens. You're really happy to see them. You don't take it for granted. I remember you saying that, Yazan, a few weeks back. Do you remember saying that? Yeah,
Yes.
that, you know, with all the suffering and everything, there's also the gratitude that, you know, like you're that you don't take every day for granted. Somebody like myself, when I wake up, I'm not kind of like thinking, oh, because when we're safe, we don't kind of see the importance of having another week, another month. You know, we don't know that our days are numbered. And the thing is that
After
go ahead.
yes, continue. I'm sorry. Yes.
Go ahead, Mohammed.
I was saying, like, after these more than 300 days, we noticed many things we wasn't seeing before. Like, for example, calling your relative to make sure they are alive. Something we didn't feel it before. Now we can feel how much this, like, so much a blessing for us that your friends, they are alive, your relatives, they are alive. Like, I mean, before this genocide, I feel like it's normal. Yes, he's alive. Yazan is alive. So what's gonna happen to him? But now, after all this, it's not normal for me to say yes, he's alive. It's not something okay or something I used to. So I didn't notice this before. Now I started to notice this, and there's many other example about this, like the safety, like the food, like the time with family, the time spending in, for example, learning many things also.
Yes. And I remember Yazan saying a few weeks ago that when you moved to Egypt and you saw the cars moving because they had petrol, that was fascinating, wasn't it?
Yeah, of course. Actually, before that war, I faced like some difficult situation, or we can say a difficult period in my life. And in that period, I just wishing for the normal days. And actually, I was like a small depression comparing to that war. It was like a small depression, like about university and study. It's normal for any student. So at that era or that period, I was like just asking God for the normal days to come back. So I want the normal day is a big or a great gift from God. That war like just learned us a lot and a lot about these things. And now we are just wishing for a normal day. We don't have like a normal day. We can find food normally. We can find clean water normally. We can sleep in our bed. So these are a lot of gifts we are used to or we got used to. Okay, and after that we don't have it anymore. So of course we can feel we can say we can feel it, or how does it worth. So it worth a lot actually. So when I came here to Egypt, I just be or I must be grateful for every single day I have. Okay, so like before a few months I was in Gaza, and I'm not sure if the next day I will be alive. So I was sleeping, and I'm not sure if I will be alive the next day. Not only me, as Muhammad said, our friends, our relatives, our neighbors. So we can't like be sure if we are or we are going to be alive tomorrow. But now in Egypt, I'm grateful for every day, and I like. The beautiful thing is that I have a chance. I have a full day. So that day I can eat, I can sleep, I can create a community, I can see my friends, my family. So I will be grateful for that day. And actually, the war in Gaza teach us a lot of stories. Actually, because they're like we can say hundreds or thousands of people have been killed. Okay, so these peoples are not numbers. Every single person of these used to have a story, used to have a family, had friends, had a passion, had study, maybe a job. So it's actually it's a huge number, but every single person had his own life. So like thinking about one person of them can make a lot of stories. So actually, not only that people have stories, we also, like, a lot of people have stories. I have a story from my home, how I evacuated several times. First time to Khan Yunis, second time to Rafah. Then I had to live in a stranger people's house. Like, other people have different stories. Some of them lived in a tent. Some of them, like, lost their some of their body parts. Like, there's a huge amount of stories came from Gaza, and me as Palestinian from Gaza, like, I'm seeing the situation. I'm seeing that scene. So I'm just connecting things together, and I'm just learning more and more, and I'm just gaining a lot of stories. And that is what we can connect to creativity. So we are full of stories that we can tell to the world. All these stories we can go, like, as Ms. Jesper said, as an engineer, we can, like, search for beyond things, or why did things happen, or what are the conclusions. So for me, like, the story can't go like just like this, or I can hear it and it's okay to hear it. No, I hear that story or I learn about it. I just think about the beyond things, the things that are not seen, and I'm just trying to deliver it to the world and make the world feel what the people in Gaza are feeling right now.
Yeah, thank you, Yazan. And Buki, tell us how, your lived experience, how, in terms of empathy, how does your story relate to, how does it weave together with what Yazan and Mohammed are saying?
Thank you, Yazan and Mohammed, for sharing your stories. I really empathize with you, and you have been in, like, the war zone, like, going through all those traumas, and there are some things that you can't even verbalize that have happened to you or you've seen throughout those processes. So in a way, I kind of see the strengths that you have, even to be able to share your stories, because as Desiree highlighted earlier, it's kind of difficult for people to tell stories about themselves. Somehow, when I was writing my own stories, or before I started writing my own stories, my supervisor kind of suggested if I wanted to write my story as a fictional person, because sometimes there's a way you might be able to connect to your past if you're not directly writing about yourself. So I don't know, maybe if you struggle to write some of those things in relation to your own experiences, you might want to consider writing them as a third person, because somehow it might be easier for you to write it like a story and then maybe think about it as a fictional story, and you might want to be creative in a way to write the ending that you want for that story, and in a way you're visualizing what you want for Gaza, or what you want for your Palestinian people that are still in Gaza or that they've migrated somewhere else. Yeah, so in a way, kind of give you a continuity in that aspect. But I really find your stories quite inspirational, the way you shared them, and it's good that you're raising the awareness, and thanks to Desiree as well for supporting you to raise this awareness as well, and hopefully you get the support that you need from the wider public, because your story is relational, as we've said, and as Desiree has highlighted earlier, and people will be able to think about themselves, like, what would they have done if they were in your shoes, or how would they feel if they were in Gaza as well, and the world was pretending not to see them. Yeah, well done.
Yeah, because that, like, tell me if this is right or wrong, I'm not sure, but I believe that there's about 2 million people in Gaza. Is it about 2 million people?
Yeah, actually it's 2.2 million.
2.2. So
actually, yeah, more than 50,000 have killed, and more than 100,000 have evacuated to Egypt or outside Gaza.
So approximately, let's say, like, just to round things off, like, let's say there's about 2 million people in Gaza. And my kind of vision was that I know around the world there are millions of people who support Gaza, millions, more than 2 million people. And my vision was, or is that if each person in Gaza has a bridge to the outer world, like a strong relational bridge, that is just so powerful. It's like, there's two of you here on this call, and there are millions, as I say, around the world, and it's about building those links so that it's through those links that those opportunities and the spaces that you need, like to be creative, will arise. So let me go to Chris now then. Chris, you are a community builder. You've been building communities for many years. How, what do you see, like, for Yazan and Mohammed in terms of building their communities and being creative in these communities?
Well, I attended, well, let's say where I live, there's an organization that called Civic Square, and they've landed in our community, and they're trying to make life better for people. And they have a thing called a trade school, and that is where people who have skills try and teach those skills to the rest of the community. And I attended a trade school last night, and it was about networking. And I was interested, first of all, Yazin, you talked about community, but then you suddenly said, I network. And you were in a sort of a situation where probably you can network in a positive way, that is, build networks and have a network mindset where you know what your purpose is, and then you can link to other networks and other communities who share your purpose and your vision. Whereas Muhammad is in a situation where there's an actor wanting to destroy your networks, and your networks are being eroded and destroyed every day, your personal network and the network of the community you live in, and it must be difficult for you to do something positive rather than just try and survive and count the days as you are counting the days, and hoping that something's going to emerge that's going to put a stop to this horror that you're living through.
Yeah, and even though, like Mohammed was talking about the fact that this community is still strong, because even in suffering, those relationships are strong with new people. But what you're saying is about exchanging skills and everything, and I suppose what you mean is that the space is not, because it's all about survival rather than creativity. What do you think, Mohammed? Is it, because most people around you are, their main concern is about survival. When my family came here in the 60s, my father was in Punjab. He was a farmer, he was a landowner, he had land, but to survive in this country, he was sweeping floors in factories, so he had to do that because it was about survival. There was it wasn't about creativity. And so when I got educated, it was about getting a job, getting paid so that I could support myself and whatever. It wasn't about creativity. It wasn't about being an artist and kind of like having the luxury of having time and space just to be creative. So what we're saying is that sometimes we're just focused on survival. We don't really have the space for creativity. What do you think? Because you're in that situation now, Mohammed.
Well, actually, the people here are thinking the same, just surviving, how they can spend these days as the most difficult days, how they can just survive in these days until everything is finished, is done, then everyone can go to his home, even his destroyed home. People are actually still thinking positively, still have hope, not not all the people, but most of them, they are still having a hope for finishing this war. But in other hand, there is many people, they are like lost their hope. Like, for example, my father, he's telling me every time we hear in the news that there is maybe very soon there will be this war will finish. Maybe another like next week we will have the same news. So after all this, he lost any hope, and he's just every time he hear anything about this stopping the war, he's saying, I cannot believe this until I'm in Gaza, until I can go back to Gaza. Unless there is nothing will end, there is no hope for this. So my father, from the side that's saying no hope until we are living this hope, living that we are back. So some people trying to think positively, trying to think in this as every day, and other they are just like done with it. They lost any positively thinking or any hope or anything. So, and just people really like these two types, these two types of people, and they are still trying to survive, to live each day after day, as they don't have actually any choice for this.
Mhm. Yeah, that's understandable. And Buki, for yourself, like, you come from Nigeria. Have you experienced this kind of community disruptions and people trying to recreate their communities and above all to restore their optimism? Because that's what Mohammed is talking about. Because when like something like a tragedy, you can't see the end of that tragedy because it's tragedy after tragedy after tragedy, and you can't see when those tragedies are going to end. It can destroy that optimism, and in my view, like when the optimism is destroyed, that's the most serious. It's not about losing the home. The home can be rebuilt, a house can be rebuilt, but it's when the optimism is destroyed that and depression sinks in. When somebody becomes depressed, well, depression and creativity don't go hand in hand, really. I think creativity arises from that enthusiasm. From Nigeria, your lived experiences of communities there, what's your kind of thoughts on that?
Thank you for highlighting that. When I was in Nigeria, then we didn't have this crisis that have been going on and on until now. So, and don't forget again, most of the things we see on TV or on the news, if we're watching from outside where the conflicts have been happening, they're from the Western perspectives. If you're not getting the news directly from people who are within the conflict or within the war or situation, it's difficult to have the actual sense of or have the feeling of what's happening in reality. Again, in regards to hope for the future, it was sad hearing how Mohammed was talking about his dad and how he's lost hope that they'll ever go back home. Is such a sad reality. And it's difficult, again, to see things from a positive point of view or to be optimistic when, like, right there and then, they're in survival mode and just thinking about how to get money to feed themselves tomorrow. Not even for tomorrow, but for today. So, it's quite sad, but in a way, because you have experienced all those hardships, you have your story to tell. Don't stop telling it, because you have your voice, you have the social media platforms and people like Jezville that they're behind you, and that means that people can hear your stories from your own point of view. which goes far enough to make those meaningful connections for people to empathize with you in a deeper level.
Yes, and in one of our conversations, Buki, we were talking about the fact that, like, for example, South Africa was one of the first countries to take a political stand in being an ally, because they've experienced, they know what apartheid, they know the tragedies, and and so there is that empathy, because we can identify, we're not in that situation that Mohammed is in, but we've already heard the stories before from our own ancestors. I've heard these stories from my own family. I haven't experienced them personally, but because I've heard them from people that I love, I can relate to it, Yazan, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, as you said, you heard from your, we can say, parents or grandparents, and you can imagine. Actually, we all were just hearing from our grandparents. Actually, I used to hear from my grandma. She told me about Nakba and how they have evacuated their homelands, and they became refugees inside Gaza. And how they were killed, how people were killed, and their land and their homes have been destroyed. And actually, I couldn't imagine that thing. We can say I could imagine, like, but it's not like you can live it. And now we are living that situation itself. Actually, we have the Nakba again in 2023. Actually, I faced the same things I heard from my grandma, and I now I could or I can have a better imagination about that thing, because I have lived it truly. So I have evacuated my home. I lived in we can say bad condition places. My home was destroyed. Our beloved people was killed. So we have lived the same issues, but in a different periods of time.
That's right. And Chris, you have Irish heritage, and so you, from your family, have probably heard stories of how the Irish suffered during times where politically things were very much against them.
Yeah, I mean, my grandfather was Irish, and so you have an incentive to start looking at the history of colonialism, which is still going on in Ireland. The British still have a foothold there, and we're not. The British can't wash their hands of what's going on in the Middle East either. I'm just interested in what you're talking about, story, and we're all controlled by story, aren't we? It affects our behavior, and we don't realize that it is. But at the back of everything that's going on, there's somebody telling a story, so the Israelis are telling a story, or some of them are, about the Bible and God telling them that this is their land and nobody else is entitled to it. And even our family stories, there's a mythology around a lot of it, and a very selective use of facts. What truly happens and how people interpret it is a different way. But I'm glad you've raised the thing about story, because it helps us when we start saying what's the story that's controlling me, controlling my thoughts and my political outlook, and there's always several conflicting stories going on, as there is with say Ireland, and the British story and the Irish story, and who do you listen to, and who do you believe? So that's where Buki comes in, because you're an academic and you can try and take some objectivity to these things.
Well, that's the thing, you see, Chris, it's not about objectivity. Stories are always subjective. You see, stories are meant to be subjective, but you're right that it's about the origin, the story of origin, who belongs, the story of who is indigenous to the land, who is indigenous and who is a settler, who has come from a foreign land, basically. And so with Palestine, it's like, who has been there for the past 2,000 years? Well, who was there 20,000 years ago? Who was there 200,000 years ago? So it's like, how far back do we go to establish who is the original indigenous person? So it's the story of origin. Who was there first? And Nigeria was divided and carved up because based on like who belongs in which part, and that is one of the most ruthless political acts is to draw lines between communities. A line was drawn in the middle of Ireland. Now we've got Northern Ireland and we've got like South Ireland. A line was drawn in Punjab. Lines were drawn, to carve up Africa. Artificial lines, okay, and so who is indigenous, Buki? Who is indigenous in Nigeria, and who is indigenous here in the UK? Is indigeneity based on like who was here? Because people talk about immigrants coming to this country from the 1960s, but immigrants have been here for thousands of years. Chris is an immigrant, but you might not see him as an immigrant, because your grandfather was Irish, right? Your grandfather was an immigrant, but he, you might not, because his skin color is different to my skin color. You might think, oh, me and Buki are immigrants, but Chris is not an immigrant. But no, we're all immigrants. It's not based on the color of our skin who belongs in an area. So Buki, go ahead. So what do you think about this concept of the story of origin? Who belongs in a place?
Stories are quite powerful, and sometimes the person that tells the story can sometimes feel like they're the owners of the stories. And just because we tell stories, a certain story, doesn't mean we own the story. And the way we tell the story also shapes other people's perspective about the story we're telling or the people we're talking about. So that's why Yazan and Mohammed, it's good for you to keep on telling your stories with your own voice, because they're your own stories. You've lived those lives in Gaza, you've migrated somewhere else, and you're still in the survival mode. And sadly, the stories you still have in your head keep shaping your lived experiences. And that's why sometimes you need to get out of your head so that you can see that you can do something with your life for the future, rather than thinking that there's no hope. Again, I think there's a lot of hope or positives that will come out of this, for the fact that you're putting your voice out there, you're trying to get help for people in those situations that you're saying, you're giving them hope from another perspective. Yeah,
right, because when we tell the story, it's about see me, hear me, and we exist. So it kind of validates our existence, because we're saying we make ourselves visible, don't we? So, Yazan, do you have any final comments about this? Next week, we will be joined by someone from the US. Her name is Noor Ali, and she's also an autoethnographer. And we met at a conference, like I did with Buki as well. And she will be joining us on the call next week. She's she's an academic as well. She works at a university in the US. So that will be another country that will be added to this community as well. Yazan, do you have any final comments?
Actually, no. I'm just so happy by these sessions, by these great people. I'm so happy with that community we are building. It just, as I said, the last session, it's just given me more passion and more motivation to tell the story, to deliver the message, and we can get more creativity out of us.
And Mohammed, do you have any final comments?
I really appreciate what you were doing, Miss Gisfer and Miss Paki and Mr. Christopher. Really appreciate that. And I'm just we can like do our best to do something for Palestine, for stopping this genocide, and to spread the real and the true story about what's happening right now in Gaza. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
Yeah, can I say what a privilege it is to meet you both and hear firsthand? Because what we do, we just get news broadcasts which are heavily censored, and just to meet you firsthand is it's a great experience for me. So I wish you all the best and in your struggle. And it's something that you may not realize this, but Israel, although what they're doing is murder, they've got set the whole world against them, and certainly about how much there's such support for you in the ordinary people of this country, maybe not from the government, but from everybody on social media and everywhere. And I think you would say us as well, Jezebel, wouldn't you? And Bookie.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll make every effort to be here next week.
Yeah. Okay, that would be wonderful to see you again, Chris. Bookie, do you have any other?
Yeah. Thank you, Jezebel, for creating this safe space for them to reflect on their past and to think about their future. And I'm really grateful for inviting me. And it was a pleasure to meet Chris as well and listen to your words of wisdom. So thank you, Mohammed and Yazan. I wish you all the best, and hopefully lots of good things will come out of this. Well done.
Yeah. And I do believe that our stories are interwoven. So, Yazan and Mohammed are, their lived experience brings up something in ourselves as well. So there's healing and inspiration, which is happening, as this tapestry of the stories kind of becomes created and interwoven. Yeah. Okay. So we'll see each other next week, and I will invite everyone I'll invite everyone, and then we'll just see who can make it. Like in any community, it's not a static community that everyone, I expect Yazan and Mohammed to be there because this is about you two, but everyone else, the invitation is open, but they will come and go when they're available. But Mohammed, Yazan, and myself, we are the anchors. And around us, people will come, at their availability, if that's okay with you. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. See you next week.
See you, inshallah.
Okay. All right. Bye for now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.